Hello everybody, happy Thursday and welcome back. Tonight we are discussing that dreaded word, failure. Before I get into that, let me just say, let me catch up. Business. Thursdays are like my hunt day. They're like, by the time Thursday comes around, I'm like shot. So for Friday night groups, anybody else that has been asking about when I'm going to have more in May, I'll let you know. I'm trying to work that around my calendar and see what's available. And also for anyone that has used to coming into town and coming to see me, please book your appointment ahead of time. I don't have any other than what I have available. That's all I have available. I don't know how else to say that. So anybody that wants to come see me or is coming into town in July, like it normally happens, please go ahead onto philquinn.com and book that ahead of time. I just wanted to get that out of the way. So tonight's topic, and I talked about this in November of 2018, and it was about failure. And someone asked me, it's been coming up again, and I want to address it because it's a word that I don't particularly care for, because I was taught by the other side that in order to fail, you must grow. And in order to grow, you have to fail. And what I mean by that is we all go through processes as a soul. And coming here with your contract, you're not endowed with this information. So let me explain to you again. I try to use myself as best I possibly can here. When I discovered my gift when I was a kid, I didn't have full access to it. So I wouldn't have been able to do a reading when I was a child because I couldn't access my gift. So it's the same thing in anybody's life. Just because you come out of school with a college degree doesn't mean that you're going to fully know how to do your job. So, and this is where coulda, shoulda, woulda starts walking in. And this is when doubt allows us to creep in, because we keep telling ourselves, I'm going to fail if I do this. And therefore, if I fail, I'm not going to try again because I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to look like a fool. I don't want to seem like I don't know it. I don't want someone to say, I told you so. So we have to take failure off the table and now replace it with lessons. And everything that we go through is simply a lesson. And like Edison said, he learned 999 ways how now to not make a light bulb. So had he have given up on the first try, there'd be no light bulb. Well, maybe somebody would have figured it out. But you know what I'm saying is there would have been no light bulb. So this is all about lessons. And this is a particular conversation that I have for people who just get out of college or are in college. They think that they should have all of this information available to them. And we'd have to go through certain processes to discover who we are and what we are. The more pressure we put on ourselves, the harder it is for us to discover ourselves. And this is a big problem, because what happens is we start squashing our emotional self. And then as we squash our emotional self, our spiritual self starts going quiet. And when you're spiritually quiet, there's no direction. You really don't know what it is. And then your head starts kicking in and it's going to start saying, see, you're not that good. See, you shouldn't have tried that. See, you shouldn't have gone to school. See, you should have kept your other job. And then you're upset with yourself because you don't evolve. And you don't evolve because you don't try. So that's why I was taught, Phil, you have to take failure out of the equation. These are all lessons. We don't come here endowed with information. Very few of us do. So unless you're a savant, and that's a whole other topic. But very few of us come in here with complete clarity of what we're going to do. And if you're an artist, you start gradually performing and learning how to paint. You learn how to draw. You learn how to do all of these things. So they don't come overnight, but you have to give yourself permission spiritually to try. And that's where I see people, their fear to try. If I try, then I'm going to fail, and whatever my mind tells me, I look foolish or whatever, and I don't want to do that. But without trying, there's no growth. See, there's no one keeping record here, guys. There's nobody keeping score. There's nobody on the other side saying, oop, didn't work out. Oop, didn't work out. That's not how it works. So what they look for and what the other side is looking for is, how hard did you try? How fast did you get, that lesson? How long did you go through? And here's part of the process with these lessons is you will continuously see the same lesson over and over again until you master it or learn it. And it can go on for a lifetime. And I have witnessed it go on for it. And I have been part of it. There's just lessons that I just didn't get. Like I had to be beat over the head for it to sink in for me. And why didn't I want to get that lesson? Because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to allow myself to say I failed. But actually it was a gift because it was being taken out of my life. So, and that was what the lesson was when to learn to let go. It takes more strength to let go than it does to hold on. We clutch things. And when you clutch them, you get into this pattern that this I'm not going to change. I'm going to hold on to this for as long as possible, and because it's always served me, why it's good or why it's bad, it's always served me. And tonight what I'm saying is let's let go of the failure word and start looking at all the lessons that I have learned, all the ways that I have learned how to grow, and most importantly, all the ways that my soul has evolved and gotten us to the place that we're in. Some of us may be in a situation that we want to evolve now, but we're afraid of taking the step because we're afraid of failing. So, and again, failure is something that is personal to each individual. It's defined differently for all of us. So what I feel is failure and what Jasper feels is failure is entirely separate. I may look at his and laugh, and he looks at mine and laughs. But the bottom line is, if we take the word failure out and soften it with lessons, and no, we're not trying to make it an easy way, but we're trying to use an appropriate word that's not going to beat you down, because I assure you, there's lots of people outside waiting to beat you down. So let's just be a little easier on ourselves. So when we replace it with, that's a lesson. So that's a lesson in people. You'll always get a lesson in people. Always. The universe will always tell you who to have in your life and who not to have in your life. So you'll always get a lesson when it comes to relationships. You'll always get red flags. So, and there are lessons about growing them. Now you take that information and you say to yourself, okay, that didn't work out. I see the red flag in the second relationship. Am I going to apply the lesson, or am I going to let this relationship end and call it a failure? Because if I apply the lesson, then I can have something healthy. If I allow this thing to continue to snowball, then it's always going to be a negative relationship. It's always going to be a downhill bat. It's just going to be a nightmare. So, and we get into it because that's what we're comfortable with. I think Jasper has a question. Go ahead.
Jenny wants to know, she asks, I don't know how to let go. Does that make me a failure?
I don't know how to let go. Does that make me a failure? Absolutely not. I don't know how to jump out of an airplane, but it doesn't make me a failure. So how do you let go? I'm talking about the letting go. See, letting go is hard, right? Because you're like, nobody wants to let go. Nobody. I don't care who you are. No matter how sick the individual is, no one wants to let go because we're so hardwired to fix and to heal and to help and to do all of that. So why do you let go? For you and for your sanity. And that's where you have to that's where the lesson is putting yourself first. It's saying that I can, Jasper said something to me last night. You can give somebody a safe place, but you can't make them feel safe. And it really resonated with me because it tied into something earlier in my life. But yes, you can give someone a safe home, but you can't make that person feel safe. And what it really means is I can't fix someone else's trauma because that's their soul work. That's what they have to do. But I can help them along the ways only if they're willing to do this. And if they're not, that's the letting go process. I've done what I can do, and now I take a step back. Go ahead, babe.
So I can't get past the shame and embarrassment of the things that I failed at. How do I get past that?
So I can't get past the shame and embarrassment of the things that I failed at. How do I get past that? So this is one of the things that people ask me often, and we try to look at it. Where's the shame and embarrassment is self-inflicted, right? Because nobody knows. It's all what we teach ourselves, and it's all what we're explaining to ourselves. But it's also a way that we stop ourselves from growing. Hey, Mike, it's also a way that we stop ourselves from growing. I don't want to let go of the shame of embarrassment because I don't want to try again. It's much easier to be a victim. Way easier to be a victim, because that way you don't have to try again. And if you don't have to try again, then you can always say, well, I did it once and it didn't work out. I tried to start a company and it didn't work out. That's okay. You learned a way how to now not start a company. But you learned a lot in that process. You see, if you break down the scenarios and you look at them, you're like, I have learned so much. Nothing that happens in our lives goes without a lesson, not a single thing. And I mean that. So, and I mean that from our spiritual core. Nothing that happens in your life goes without a lesson. And always remember that. Go ahead, babe.
Leslie wants to know, do our loved ones whom have passed see me as a failure?
Oh, thank you for this question, because this is like a great question that I wanted to ask, and I forgot to write this note down. So that's a blessing. When our family members pass over, do they look down and say, oh, failure. Kid's a failure.
Disappoint me.
Kid sucks, you disappoint me. You're this, you're that. So no, that's not what happens, because they've gone through the soul review, and as they go through the soul review, they see their own lessons that they have gone through. So no, your family member on the other side comes through to try and redirect you. See, you could be going down your path perfectly fine, and something makes you take a hard right or a hard left when you're unprepared. You're just not expected. And then something happens there. So, you know, depending on your circumstances, but your family members in readings never come through and say, oh, you've completely let me down. Oh, you've done this. Regardless of the circumstances, the other side is always there to help you. They're never there to say you're a failure. They're always there to say these are lessons. Go ahead, babe.
What if you live with someone who constantly reminds you of your failures? It's so hard to move forward.
Ooh, good question. Phil, what if I'm living with somebody who constantly reminds you of your failures? It's so hard to move forward. What do? You don't live with that person. And that is the God's honest truth. And then if you can't not live with that person, either because of finances, because the person is sick, because of you're sick, whatever the circumstances are, you have to consider the source. And what I mean is, look at the individual that's saying these things to you. Always consider the source. So, and it's not judging the source, it's just considering the source. You know, like if the person has to be within their right frame of mind. And what I mean by that is, like, I wouldn't take somebody who is physically unhealthy and take health advice from them. You know, like I go to my trainer for that. So that's where you go, but always consider the source. Go ahead, babe.
Mary wants to know, I feel like I failed my loved one who's passed because I couldn't save him. And that is what I'm having a really hard time letting go of. So,
Phil, I feel like a failure because I couldn't save the person that has passed over. And I'm having trouble getting past that. Really what it is if you cannot interfere with someone's contract. If someone's going to die at a particular time, or if someone's going to pass this is a conversation that I often have where people, particularly when they lose a child, and I let Phil, I couldn't save my kid, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that. There's just certain things that are completely we are not in control of, and never will be in control of. And no matter how hard you try, you're not going to be in control of. So, but then there's a part of us that wants to believe that we're in control of these things because it'll make us not feel like a failure. But remember, you can only do what you can do. You cannot make an individual evolve. You just can't. So if someone is contractually going to pass, you can't save them. No matter what their illness is, no matter what their circumstances is, they're going to cross over. Go ahead, babe.
Martina, I believe that's how you pronounce the name, wants to know, when we experience a lesson in one relationship and think we've learned from it, only to experience the same situation again, does this mean that we haven't fully understood the lesson the first time around?
100%. So here's the thing here, people, and I want to use relationship just as an easy example. If you're in a bad relationship and you leave that, and the same thing happens in the second relationship, two things are happening. One, you are the problem, and two, you're not applying the lesson. And when I say you are the problem, it means that you're jumping. You're not giving yourself time to say, I didn't recover from this relationship to understand what happened. You cannot leave a bad relationship and jump into another relationship. And why? The energy we project attracts. And when you end a negative relationship, all you're doing is exuding fear and insecurity and all of these things. And what you're going to attract is another negative relationship. So when I say is you are the problem, and I was there, it's because you cannot jump. You have to give yourself downtime so you can understand what happens. Then you apply the lesson, because you'll see the red flags. You'll see the red flags. And you'll be like, I'm sorry, you're not for me. I think I said many times before Jasper and I were together, and I would go out on dates and blah, 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 just like everybody else has to before they meet someone. And I told the individual, I'm like, look, one of us is paying for this dinner. Either you leave or I leave, but this is just not going to work out. And what I mean by that is sometimes you just have to be direct and say, this is not going to work out for me, so I don't need you in my life just to feel like I have somebody in my life. Go ahead, babe.
Corinne wants to know, I failed at several things in my life and learned valuable lessons, but when it comes to relationships with a loved one, why can't I accept that failure?
Oh, why can't I accept a failure with a loved one? Because you're not supposed to have one, you think. Society tells you you're not supposed to have failure with loved ones. They tell you you're supposed to have relationships with your siblings, with your parents, with this, with that. Sometimes we just clash with our siblings or with our parents. And it's just that, remember, we come in as soul groups, but sometimes souls are just passing through in our family, so you don't have the same connection as you do with another sibling. So it's just the way it goes. But you feel that way because society tells you, oh, you can't not have a relationship with your siblings. That's preposterous. So, and therefore there's a sense of failure with it. And I often say, and the other side has often said to me, if it doesn't serve you in a positive way, don't have that individual in your life. They will make you sick before you make them well. And that's where you have to put yourself first. Go ahead, babe.
I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of new experiences and things because of my fear and failure. What should I do?
Jasper, is that your question or is that the way you read that? So say that again, honey. Jasper's sick, so he's trying to get through this here. Go ahead, babe.
I feel like my fear and failure is preventing me from trying out new things. What can I do?
So I feel like my fear of failure, I couldn't hear that part, of failure, is stopping me from trying new things. What should I do? Woo-wee. Let me tell you, this is a tough one, because this goes into the letting go process, right? This goes into the freeing yourself. So what's the thing you do? You try. And that is the only way through it, people. So that means if you're trying out for a football team, if you're trying out for a sport, a class, or anything, the only way to get through the fear is to try. Remember, fear is the absence of action. And this is one of the things that we talked about before. But there is no way. Like, I'll tell you what, I was terrified of bees. Anybody that knows me will tell you I was terrified of bees. Then I went out and got 10 beehives. Not terrified of bees anymore. So my point is, I desensitized myself to the fear. And I did it because I took action. I got stung many times. And it's unpleasant, but it wasn't going to kill me. So thankfully, because I'm not allergic. But my point here is that if you take action, you will realize that fear is false evidence appearing real. And this failure is nothing more than, I tried it and I didn't like it. But everybody else does it, so therefore I should like it. No, we're all unique individuals. We don't come here as sheep. We're all here on a completely different path. There's 6.5 billion of us. So we all have different contracts. They're not the same. None of them. So don't compare yourself to the person next door. Go ahead, babe.
Is it okay if I immediately don't jump in after a failure?
Is it okay if I immediately don't jump in after a lesson? We're taking failure out. Yes, and I often advise people, give yourself time. You know, there's this idea that the clock is running and here's what's happening and so on and so forth. So yes, give yourself time to reassess. Give yourself time to look at what you perceive to be as failure versus is it really a lesson? So, and what I mean by that is give yourself time to analyze, because you cannot, like if you're getting a divorce or if you're going through a divorce, you can't be looking at your next girlfriend or your next husband because you haven't even gone through the divorce. You haven't even gone through the grief. You haven't even given yourself time to do it. Now, maybe one of you have left the relationship way ahead of that, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is you have to reassess, look back on everything and see what the lessons were in there once we get past all the rage. Go ahead, babe.
Bill has a question.
Hi, Bill.
And I definitely feel his question.
Oh, great.
He says, all families are different in communication skills.
Yes.
I feel like I don't communicate well with family members. Could this be a lesson or part of my contract challenge?
Yes. So here's the thing. Communication is something that we learn. It's not something you come in with. We all come in and we learn. Some people over-communicate, some people under-communicate, all of this here. But if you find that you have a good relationship with your family, but you don't communicate with your family, well, that would be one of your contractual things. That could just be as simply as speaking your mind. No one's saying that you should pay adulation to your family. No, that's not what we're here for. So if you need to better communicate, it is not an easy thing for people to do, Bill. Communication is something that is a learned behavior. And one of the ways we do it is we speak out loud when no one's around and we teach ourselves to do it. Get comfortable with your feelings, because when you start saying them out loud, you'll realize it's no big deal. Go ahead, babe.
Donna wants to know, I'm an old girl.
Hey, girl.
And it took me a lifetime to learn the lessons you teach us at your young age. Do the souls counsel you? Is it Isaac, or are you just this awesome?
Thank you. And I would love to take credit for my knowledge, and I've told everybody this. I'm the pipe. And I mean that, and I've said this forever, is everything that I have received throughout my lifetime has been knowledge from the other side. People ask me all the time, Phil, what spiritual books do you read? What things do you do? I do not. All that I have learned come from all the readings that I have done. So, and the other side and the knowledge that I receive from the other side. So, and I try to absorb as much information as I can. Not just for a variety of reasons, but in order to help the next person. And that's why I'm here. I know that. I've always known that. My job has been to help the next person in hopes that the next person will help the next person. I don't for a second think I sit up here that I'm going to heal. But what I do hope is that by helping you, you'll help the person next to you, vice versa, so on and so forth. And that is the goal and really the rule of spirituality. So is that we're able to give back. But we give back when we're able to learn our lesson and say, here it is. And I accept what I am and who I am. And remember, as I told you all, I did not want to do Facebook Live. I was forced into this because I was extremely fearful of, oh my God, I can't do this. I went through all of these things. Jasper had to hold my hand all the way here. So, and by the time I got comfortable, I learned a lot of lessons. I learned a lot of things about it. So go ahead, Jasper.
So I keep getting a lot of lessons and opportunities, but I keep hitting a wall. What advice do you have for me?
So I keep getting lessons. Well, say that again.
So I keep experiencing failures over and over again, and I keep hitting a wall. What
so if
advice do
you
have for me?
continuously keep hitting a wall, and we're calling it a failure, and it's repetitive, you're not meant to be there. And what I mean by that is, if you keep trying to go into the same thing over and over and over again, it's not working. It's just the universe's way of saying, don't go there. It's telling you, let's take a left here. It's telling you, let's take a right here. But it's telling you, stop this, because that lesson is not working here. It's just not working for you. So when this keeps happening, it's just the universe telling you, let it be. Let it be. So, and when you let it be, you'll get the full vision. You'll get the full image of what you've been pounding your head against, because you've got a concussion at that stage. Seriously, you do. So when you take a step back, you're like, that's really what I was up against. Go ahead, honey.
I have a loved one that is having a really hard time with failure. How do I support them?
So I have a loved one that's having a difficult time with failure. How do you support them? So again, we're using failure here, but these are lessons. So no, it's not Jasper, but it's we're using lessons here. So I'm having a loved one that's struggling with a lesson. How do I support them? Let them talk it out. And that's what I always tell people. It's not, people who are in pain don't necessarily want advice. What they want is just to be heard. They want a cup of coffee. They want a cup of tea. They want a bitch session. They want whatever it is. But sometimes people just need to release it. That's it, me included. So sometimes I just want to come on here and just rant to you all and be like, this is how my week has been. But, it's just sometimes people just want to get it out. But sometimes you don't have to advise, you just have to listen. So when someone is in a stage where they're trying to get through a lesson, let's listen first before we advise, because if they're not ready to hear advice, you're just, again, pounding your head against a wall. Go ahead, babe.
Oh, Wanda says, hi, Phil. I want to thank you. I'm glad. Oh, God, my sinuses. I'm so sorry. I'm glad I found you. I lost my husband in December 2018, and you helped me cope. So thank God I'm sorry.
Thank you, Wanda. It was a pleasure.
Thank
Thank you very much. I'm reading it for you because Jasper's sick. It was good. Thank you for cutting in. Go ahead, honey.
So James wants to know, is it possible to only get signs from the spirits in our dreams? It seems for me this is the only time I do.
So it's getting signs from the other side in the dream state is the most easiest format for you to get signs, James. So, and the reason why I say that is because your mind's relaxed. You're not focused on everything that's going on around you. You're not focused on things that are happening. But once you go into the dream state, that's when the other side is easiest to get communication from you. When you're awake, you tend to be distracted, so you're not thinking about the other side. Go ahead, honey.
Bill wants to
Bill,
say,
good.
my son feels like a failure because he is 30 and not married. Dating is rough these days.
Bill, dating's horrible. I told Jasper I would not, oh my God, I would not want to go out there. First of all, 30 is extremely young, and millennials are brutal right now with their ex. That's another thing I want to talk about. You know what, Bill? Thank you for bringing this up, and I'm going to go into this real quick because this is one of the questions that I get for people in that age group. I'm 30 years old. I'm not married. I'm not looking for anything. I'm trying to find the love of my life, so on and so forth. I'm hitting the pavement here. I'm looking for this person. Yo, take a step back. Let's assess and see what type of person you want to date. Let's go out on many, many dates before you try to settle down because you're going to rush into something and it's not going to be natural. Let's find out who you are at 30 years old and say to yourself, what am I really looking for? What type of relationship am I looking for? Who am I? What are my limitations? We all have limitations. So everything's always good in the beginning, but it's not a failure. See, everyone thinks that the grass is greener on the other side. All you have to do is say to the universe, I'm willing and I'm open, and they will bring somebody healthy to you. But if you keep sitting there saying, it's got to be this type, it's got to be that, it's just going to be a long, long process. So Bill, tell him and tell your daughters, nobody rush into anything, particularly marriage, because it's something you have to be absolutely sure about. Go ahead, babe.
And according to all these people reading Bill's comments, he is doing just fine. Don't worry, Bill. So we have a question from Jody. Jody says, when you know you have a negative thought pattern, what's the best way to change your beliefs?
So if you have a negative thought pattern, what's the best way to change your beliefs? This is a tough question because I've even gone there. I think, I've shared this here. When you get into this is going to happen. This is going to failure. So what it is, and Isaac taught me this is, Phil, it's a projection. And a projection because you're not where your feet are. And you're not where your feet are because you're so afraid of what you have to do. So you project 24 hours ahead, a week ahead, a month ahead, in order to say, I'm going to self-sabotage. And that's the throat chakra. This is where will and communication comes in. So it says that because you're not where your feet are, meaning I'm not here right now in this room, I'm going to project ahead of myself, you're really sabotaging yourself. So the best way to do that is correct ourselves by saying, okay, I got to reground, look where my feet are and say, I have to take this day by day. Meaning that I got to rise above this in a higher self. Often when people see hawks, that's a symbol of showing you rise above your thought process that you're in at that moment. Go ahead, babe.
Mike wants to know, do we need to speak out loud so that our guides can hear us? What is the best way to communicate?
So you do not need to speak out loud in order for your family or your guides to hear you. You can speak out loud. I often tell people that when you see something happening, why it's communication from the other side, a sign, so on and so forth, acknowledge them verbally because it'll help establish communication after that. So normally if you lose somebody, it takes about 30 days or so, even longer for them to start communicating with you. If the soul is frantic, they'll start communicating with you right away. If the soul knew it was going to pass over, it'll take them about 30 days or less. People, it's a couple of weeks before they get their dreams and their communication and stuff like that. Hello, Kathy Hankel. Good to see you back. So I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. So that's how that works. Go ahead, honey.
How does the other side help process through failure or lessons?
How does the other side help us process our lessons? When the lesson stops repeating, and they help us process it by showing you, look, if you're getting a lot of resistance, it's the other side showing you, stop trying this, you're wasting your time. And it's not telling you not to try this, it's telling you to reevaluate. And if you could reevaluate, that's the best way that they're going to get you through this. So here's what I want you all to do. I want you all to take the word failure out and start using the word lesson in your life on a daily basis. And if you can start doing that, you're going to notice that you have less fears about traveling things and going there. How did I meet my spirit guide? That, Mary, I'm going to get into on a different topic. I do want you all to know this. I'm going to end this here tonight with two things. One, again, if you need me, please go to philquinn.com. All my information is there. And two, next week my topic is going to be survivors of suicide, because this is a topic that needs to be brought up and discussed, and I have these set aside where I want to discuss this. So I will be back next Thursday to discuss this topic. But in the meantime, I want you all to understand that everything that we do is not a failure. It's simply a lesson. It's how you apply it to your life, and how you use this word determines your growth pattern. If you keep using the word failure, I assure you, you won't grow. If you use the word lesson, I assure you, you're going to have them. I'll see you all next Thursday. Thank you all for tuning in. Love you all, and enjoy the nice weather. Take care.